Hello everyone, welcome to Coach Craig Sports. Today we're gonna do a Dynasty dive, or a deeper look into Dynasty today. We're joined by Mr. Other Craig,
Hello there,
or G.
also known as G. Went to college with Coach Craig here, and I've been involved in a number of different leagues with Coach Craig.
You, anything else you want to say about yourself?
Live in Wisconsin, big Packers and Brewers fan, so that is my home base.
Cool. So we're gonna be taking a look at your team today. In the XFL Superstars League it was a Dynasty Contract Startup League. Anything you want to say starting off with it?
My approach to this league was very simple, in that I wanted a well-balanced team, and then on the defensive side, I wanted sacks. I wanted high sack numbers.
High sack now. Was there anybody you were highly targeting when you first started off?
Josh Jacobs. I'm partial to the Raiders and just how they maneuver and play their and design their teams. I find it very odd, but also very, very interesting, to say the least.
And you gave
So he was like one of my top targets on the offensive side of things. On the defensive side of things, I really wanted Myles Garrett just because of those sack numbers, but also just an amazing defensive player. Definitely in the top 5 in my mind.
So, do you worry about Jacob's injuries at all?
Yeah, it's definitely in my rear view mirror, but also I think that is behind him, hopefully, knock on wood.
Do you worry about them bringing Jalen Richard back and drafting Lynn Bowden Jr., that he's not going to catch any passes?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that is a risk.
It seems like they're eliminating his skill set.
I picked up Jalen Richard, I should say, as somewhat of a handcuff, which is always a good idea, especially with one of your running backs.
Especially in Dynasty.
Correct.
Did you take your approach like you're trying to build your team in a win now mode, or over the next couple of years, or further down, or trying to build a younger team for a Dynasty, 2 years from now?
I was looking for a team where I can compete right now, maybe not win, but compete, and win in the near future. Mm-hmm. And so I think I built that. Many of my players are on the younger end, mm-hmm. In general, or they're definitely not in their prime quite yet. And so that's how I determined what players I wanted on my team. Mm-hmm. For example, Daniel Jones, quarterback for New York Giants. Yep. A lot of potential. The team is not there yet to support him completely, but he has a lot of potentials to be a top quarterback in fantasy football.
Well, he had a lot of good fantasy games last year. I think he's got a lot more around him than you think, too. Mm-hmm. When you look at it, they got a lot of supporting cast around him. It's just their defense is awful, which actually helps him in the long run, because that means he's got to throw the ball more.
Yep. And my number one quarterback right now is Carson Wentz, very injury prone, as you all know, but great numbers when he's healthy. Plus, a little shout out, I went to school with Brock Jensen, and he was the starting quarterback for North Dakota State before Carson Wentz took over. And so it's sort of a little bit of a fun little homage to Brock and that connection.
He didn't really make it in the NFL, did he?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so he's the last one that didn't make it then.
He signed with the Dolphins, and he was on the Dolphins practice squad, and then he played in Canadian football for a while. But that's a side note.
Carson Wentz, now Easton Stick, he got drafted by the Chargers, and then I don't know if you know about Trey Lance or not yet. That's their quarterback last year and is going to be their back as their quarterback this year.
Yeah, they're pumping out quarterbacks right now.
Well, he could be another first-round pick, too. He didn't throw a single interception all last year.
Oof. That's impressive.
Part of your team looks like you got like guys that have hip injuries.
Yeah.
With Chris Carson and Jarvis Landry.
I will say I was hoping to get a better second running back than Chris Carson. He was definitely my backup option, Chris Carson was. I forget exactly who my primary option was there, but he's definitely not my first choice. Wasn't my first choice.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. You got a little bit of cap left over, too, at least. At least your running backs ended up a little bit better than mine did, at least. But then we had that trade where you got Carlos Hyde, too, to kind of supplement Chris Carson if something happens to him again.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. But I know I watched, or I was listening to a different podcast where they had a doctor talking about Chris Carson's injury. And they said since he didn't have surgery, it must have been like a small fracture on the outside of the hip that would have healed on its own, because if it was anything else, he would have had surgery on it. They don't sound too worried about it, at least. So
that's good. Sort of my dark horse on my offensive side is Miles Boykin. I think he has a ton of potential with Baltimore at wide receiver.
You think they're going to throw him the ball?
I do. Or at least they're going to give him a chance.
Still got... They like to throw the ball to the tight ends a bunch. They like to run the ball. They threw the ball
That's why I got Mark Andrews at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So
they threw the ball to Hollywood Brown every chance they got. They still got Willie Snead for some reason, too. It'll be interesting to see how much playing time he actually gets. And then they brought in Devin Duvernay, too, out of Texas. But he's more of a slot guy.
Talking about my wide receivers, in fantasy football, I've always noticed, and something that's a great idea, is when you have a quarterback, always get a wide receiver or tight end from the same team to get those double points. You get that double whammy effect. And so I did that with Deshaun Jackson, hoping that he bounces back and becomes that double whammy.
You're hoping he plays more than one game this year.
Correct.
But yeah. They said last year he had that core injury and then he just kept trying to rehab it. If he would have just had surgery on it to start with, he probably would have played like half the year. The real question, do you think Tyler Higbee's going to have as good a year this year as he did at the last half of last year?
Probably one of my riskier plays. No, I don't think so. But I think he could have sleeper potential going forward and into the future. I don't think Goff is the answer in LA.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they kind of stuck with him,
Correct.
whether he is or not. I don't think Higbee's too big a risk on a 2-year deal for $750,000 though.
No. It was a smart risk, but also it fills a spot on my team.
And you don't need him to be great either if you got Mark Andrews. So.
Yep.
So it seems like most of your guys, you have kind of a mix though. You have the guys that get a lot of targets and receptions. You got the Jarvis Landry, Tyler Boyd, Adam Humphries down below, and then you got some of the big play guys like Deshaun Jackson, Mark Andrews. So you try to kind of balance them out a little bit.
Correct. And that was all part of the strategy when I was picking players. I was like, I want a well-balanced team that has target potential, but also has big play potential as well.
Which is good. I mean, this is a PPR league, so you need the guaranteed points, but then at some point you gotta have somebody who can push you over the top too.
I mean, my offense is not going to wow week in and week out, but it's definitely going to compete.
Probably part of it, this league's kind of tough too, just with running back depth. Because since we're a 16-team league, it's hard to have, like 3 running backs.
And that is going to change throughout the season because the injury bug will hit one or multiple teams in the league, and you just don't know who and when and etc. So
the injury bug or the corona bug?
Both.
Then your Gus Edwards pick might be pretty good.
Yeah.
You have any thing to say about any maybe like your young sleepers or your practice squad guys?
Well, I picked Anthony Gordon as my third string quarterback. He's the quarterback in Seattle. A long-term investment just since can't think of his name right now.
Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson, yes, is there and is entrenched there for the foreseeable future.
Russell Wilson ain't ever missed a game, but maybe if Gordon can do something, maybe he can go somewhere else, but he ain't bad.
Yeah, he definitely has that fire underneath him that you need in a quarterback that you like to see.
Yeah, he had the good year at Washington State, but the system's real supportive to that.
So, and then another sleeper that I have, a young sleeper, is J.J. Whiteside.
Arcega Whiteside?
Yeah.
It's not Arcega, it's Arcega Whiteside.
Arcega Whiteside? Okay.
Arcega. No, it's pronounced weird.
But he's my other Philadelphia wide receiver to go with Carson Wentz. Again, he's not going to do a whole lot this year, most likely, but in year 2, 3, 4, and going forward, maybe.
So you pretty much got him because you had Jackson and Winston?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's a chance that he could bounce back. You also got Alshon Jeffrey. He had a Liz Frank injury, so he's probably going to miss the first couple weeks of the year. So it just kind of depends. I mean, Deshaun Jackson's going to be on one side, but they already said they wanted Jalen Reagor, their first-round pick, to have him. They're going to put him more in the slot, at least to start with. So maybe somebody like Arcega Whiteside or even Greg Ward's still around. Maybe they'll play on the outside in the beginning of the year. It'd be kind of interesting to see. Or maybe they'll shift Zach Ertz out to the outside and play Goddard at tight end more. Because they did a lot of that last year too. Maybe they can even throw Boston Scott out at receiver. Or I guess there's always Marquise Goodwin too that they traded for from the 49ers. But he's kind of similar to Deshaun Jackson too. So they got a little bit of speed at least.
So yeah, that's sort of my offense in a nutshell, and how I structured it. Well balanced again, not going to wow you, but it's going to compete. Moving on to sort of defensive side of things, which is not the most common way of playing fantasy football. I will say that.
This is the IDP, the individual defensive player.
Correct. And so I'm not too accustomed to this way. So I focused in on dominating in one category, which is never the greatest idea, but it has its merits if you do it right. And so I wanted to have fun with the defense in this league, so I focused in on sacks and dominating in the sack category. And you can always use that to trade for players to fill in holes later if needed.
Potentially. I think sometimes guys that get a lot of sacks, sometimes they get a little overinflated too. Especially like the guys that are kind of like the edge players, the rush outside linebackers. Defensive ends, it obviously helps them. I like Fletcher Cox on your team for $1 million. He's pretty good. I didn't really realize you had him before.
Yeah, he is a wall to get through.
Well, I mean, he gets pretty good sacks for a defensive tackle too. And in leagues like this, it's hard to get defensive tackles you ain't get many points out of unless you got like Aaron Donald or someone like that.
How I picked my players with that approach was I looked at what were the top defenses last year. That is also a risky strategy to do the year prior and not to factor in multiple other elements into your equation. Buffalo, dominant defense. So I tried to get a few Buffalo players. Cleveland, again, dominant defense. Tried to get a bunch from them. Tampa Bay was another one. Green Bay, my hometown team. And then T.J. Watt. Got to get a Watt brother in there.
Well, Pittsburgh had one of the best defenses last year, too.
Correct.
Watt's a good player. Also, I'd say with Tampa Bay was a lot better defense last year. Now that they got Todd Bowles as their defensive coordinator, he's been historically good as a defensive coordinator, especially working with the defensive backs. I know I picked up even Jamel Dean myself. He's a cornerback. I think he'll be pretty good. But he had I think he led the league in pass breakups, and he only played like half the time.
Well, when you're looking at defenses, I feel it's a more of a team approach. So it's not as an individual so much. And so if you focus in on the team as a whole, the defense as a whole, and pick players from those good defenses, you have a good shot of having a good individual defensive team for fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of it too is in leagues like this, you got one of the most important stats is tackles, actually. So you want guys that are going to be on the field most of the time, and defensive backs sometimes is hard too, because if you have a shutdown corner on one side, he ain't getting a whole lot of stats because they ain't throwing the ball out to him as much. So sometimes in these type of leagues, you actually want the guy that's on the opposite side of the shutdown corner, because that's the guy they're throwing at all the time, and he's the one that's got to go tackle the wide receiver.
Correct. And that's why I picked up Kevin King.
I don't know if he's worth $5 million, but we'll see.
No, that was a little much, but I liked him. I like as he's a Green Bay Packer. So I was like, yeah, why not? So I like him personally.
Was that your biggest overpay then?
No. Looking back, my biggest overpay was my kicker and punter. Lesson learned. Don't do that.
Yeah. And how many years did you give your kicker again? 3? You gave them both 3 years deals.
Yeah. That was, again, not the wisest decision.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have that. You always have a decision that you make in the heat of the moment that you're like, looking back, you're regretting. You just try to limit that as much as possible.
Yep. Hopefully they both keep their jobs for 3 years.
I think my punter is safe. Kicker
can change so quickly in the NFL from one year to the next. One year Blair Walsh is a Pro Bowler. The next year he's missing 19-yard field goals in the playoffs and losing his job.
So my punter is Tress Way. So he's definitely one of the top punters, at least last year he was, because the Redskins suck.
And they're probably not going to be that much better this year either.
No, so I think that was a smart pick. My kicker is Josh Lambo from Jacksonville. That was probably a little bit more risky and dumb, but he was one of the top kickers last year. And that's how I based that off of. But again, that was sort of stupid of me, looking back.
So if that was your biggest overpay, what was your biggest bargain then?
I'm not.
Fletcher Cox, maybe?
Yeah, probably Fletcher Cox. Looking through it again, yeah. I think that's a safe pick for my best.
Mm-hmm. Or even maybe Daniel Jones could be. Jarvis Landry ain't bad for $2.5 million either. Some of the wide receivers are going crazy prices at the end there.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little ridiculous. Who was it that was going for? Weren't you bidding on one of them that went ridiculous?
I've been on Juju for a while. I think he went for
Yeah.
like 7.6 million at the end, and like
Yeah, I remember that.
in the beginning, that's like DeAndre Hopkins went for that much or something like that. But some of the players at the end went crazy. I mean, you obviously know what happened with Drew Lock.
So yeah, and then I also have Logan Ryan on my defense, which he had a lot of tackles last year. That's why I targeted him. He isn't on a team yet, I don't believe.
I don't think nobody picked him up yet either. I heard he wants too much money. That's why he ain't signed yet.
But 73 solo tackles, that is impressive for a cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
So if he does sign with a team and gets close to that number, that would be a worthwhile player.
Yeah, I think he'll end up somewhere. It just kind of depends on where.
Otherwise, yeah, I went sack heavy, and then I was looking at tackles secondarily, and I'm hoping to get those tackle numbers with my cornerbacks, safeties, and linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this strategy is going to totally pan out how I planned it, but it'll be fun to watch.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my team in a nutshell and sort of my thought process.
Do you think your team has any weaknesses right now?
Definitely on the defensive side. If those sacks do not materialize, my defense is going to weigh my whole team down pretty big. Offense is, again, well-balanced, so I am not worried about my offense much unless the injury bug hits it, which if it does, it decimates teams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably my biggest weakness is my defense, I think.
I think the whole thing with the sacks are kind of like boom or bust. It's kind of like Deshaun Jackson. You just got like some weeks it's gonna be real good, some weeks it's not. That's why it's hard to rely on sacks in this type of league too, though, because T.J. Watt might have 2 sacks one week and then have 3 weeks of no sacks or something like that.
And with that being said, that's why I'm hoping other players that I picked up will fill in those gaps where T.J. Watt or a Myles Garrett are struggling to get sacks. And I have a bunch of sack producers, Preston Smith, Marcus Golden, Shaq Barrett, exactly. So I think I have enough sack individuals to fill in those times, but again, you just don't know. A number of them could tank. A number of them could just go off, and my team could be really dominant for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just hope the latter is true.
Yeah, well, if they all go off like 1 week, you're gonna win pretty easy. But
Yep.
With my approach, I'm gonna pull up my team real quick, Joe, just for defense. So, on my defense, I try to get guys I thought were values, pretty much, or that will have good stats. So, your linebackers, you kind of focused on guys that had sacks more. Mine, I grabbed Tahir Whitehead. He's kind of a tackling machine. He's always been a middle linebacker on bad teams, but he just keeps on getting away, keeps on finding a way to start on bad teams. I got Isaiah Simmons because I just think he's going to be a playmaker kind of all over.
Nice.
And then, let's see. I got Chandler Jones. He's kind of like my only sack one, but he's just so good and the value was right there. And then my other linebacker I got was Drake Greenlaw. I don't know if you know who he is. He's one of the interior linebackers for the 49ers. He's a rookie last year, but he played pretty good. And then my defense, defensive end, I got DeMarcus Lawrence and J.J. Watt. They're kind of all around defensive ends. Got sacks, get tackles, stuff like that. They're both relatively decent contracts. I think I might have got the best defensive tackle value in the whole league because I got Deron Payne. He was the minimum contract for 3 years, and he's with the Washington Redskins. He's not going to go get a whole bunch of sacks, but he's all well-rounded guy. Gets a decent amount of tackles and stuff like that. And then I got Jordan Phillips. He had, I think, 9 sacks or 8.5 last year for Buffalo, and then he signed with the Cardinals. So, and they were both for the minimum contract, so I like both of them a lot. And then I kind of did a weird thing with my cornerbacks, too. I got Eric Rowe and Kareem Jackson as 2 of my cornerbacks.
Interesting.
And they're both going to probably start at safety.
Yeah.
So usually safeties get more tackles than cornerbacks.
Correct.
So that's kind of my strategy with that. But then I got that Jamel Dean I was talking about. He gets a lot of pass deflections. And in this league, we put in like 1 point for pass deflection as well. So I think he'll be good because he's kind of a bigger, more physical corner. So I think he'll get decent amount of tackles, decent amount of pass deflections too. And then, let's see, I got Cameron Dantzler, too. He's a rookie out of Mississippi State. He's a real good corner in college. And he might start for the Vikings this year. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest problem was finding a safety. Because every safety, I got Eddie Jackson for real cheap, the Bears safety. I got him for like the minimum, and then everybody else I kept bidding on, I kept losing. Then I ended up with Ronnie Harrison.
I feel I have a decent combo at safety with Anthony Harris and Kevin
Byard.
Yep. Definitely is 2 of the top safeties out there.
Harris was definitely good last year.
A number you don't want to look at it, never look at interceptions when you're creating a defense because you just don't know when they're going to happen, and that fluctuates so much every year.
Mm-hmm.
That's one stat just never look at.
I think the worst thing I did in the whole startup, I tilted and I bid on Bradley Roby, the Texans cornerback. I got him for the minimum contract. It's just a 1-year deal, but I'm like, I don't really want him on my team. Cause I got outbid on somebody else, and I just fine, I guess I'll grab him. But then I bid on Kareem Jackson later because somebody else was bidding on him. But I think I got 2 decent safeties. I think they'll be good for fantasy, and they're not expensive. And then I got Kareem Jackson, and then I got Eric Rowe, who both should be dual eligible at corner and safety at some point this year, since they're already eligible.
And to mention, I also grabbed Darnell Savage as my sort of backup third safety.
Yeah.
And as a Packer fan, I have mixed feelings on Darnell Savage. He has really great games, and then he bombs. So
yeah, that's kind of how he was in college, though, too. But we'll see how he develops.
Yep.
And then I think for me, for my other safeties, I grabbed 2 practice squad ones that I got now. It's Kevon Wallace. He played at Clemson. And everybody else kind of talks about how Isaiah Simmons played all over, played every position and stuff. Well, part of the reason Isaiah Simmons did that is because Wallace could do the exact same thing, but he's taken in the 4th round. But I think he'll either be a decent safety, or if he kind of bulks up a little bit, they might play him at outside linebacker at some point in the future. And then my other safety, I took Ashton Davis. He's out of Cal. He's going to be, I think, a good free safety in time. I like my practice squad, though. It's all guys from this year's draft. There's James Lynch, defensive tackle out of Baylor. You can throw on some of the highlights of him. I mean, he looks pretty good for being drafted where he was drafted.
Probably my favorite pickup on my defense on the practice squad later on was Josh Uche.
Josh Uche.
Yeah, you suggested that for me to pick him up, and I started looking into him more. I was like, ooh, this guy has a lot going for him. So.
Yeah. Well, part of his problem too was he played at the University of Michigan. He was banged up in college. He hurt his foot, and I think he hurt his knee as well. And then he was playing with Chase Winovich and what's that guy's name? Rashawn Gary that the Packers took.
Yep.
Yeah, so he kind of played the same position as those 2 guys in college. So then, his first couple of years, he wasn't getting in because he was hurt, and then he had them guys kind of in front of him too. So you're talking, you having a first round and a second round pick in front of him. He played this year, and he played pretty good. But he's real interesting though, because he's kind of like outside linebacker, edge rusher. but compared to a lot of other guys, he can do a lot of things. He can rush the passer decent. Michigan also put him out in coverage a lot too, and he held his own there. So it'd be interesting to see what Belichick does with him.
Mm-hmm. And then finally on my team, 2 players on defense that I'm very intrigued to see what they do. They're both rookies, Zach Bond and AJ Epineza. 2 great players in college, but will that translate into the NFL?
Yeah, I think with Bond, it was real interested in having the Saints draft him.
Yeah.
Because he's more of like a 3-4 outside linebacker, and they're a 4-3, and they're going to play him that outside linebacker, I guess. Like, he won't play much this year because they got 3 or 4 guys that'll be ahead of him, but he'll be a situational pass rusher maybe.
AJ won't play a whole lot this year just because Mario Addison is there.
Yeah, they got Addison, they got Jerry Hughes, and they got somebody else too.
But 2-3 years down the road, both of those could be stars if they develop correctly.
Epineza probably would have got picked in the first round if he didn't run such a crappy 40 time. Because his 40 time, I think it was like a 5.
So yeah, that's sort of my defense in a nutshell, and my team in a nutshell.
Cool. Yeah, I also like your the Raekwon Davis pick too.
Yeah, I wanted to pick someone on the Dolphins. So.
Yeah, for most people that don't know, Raekwon Davis, he's at Alabama. He's a beast. I think he's like 6'6", like 300 and something. He played next to Quinnen Williams, and actually it's a couple of years ago now, but Quinnen Williams was a top like 5 pick. What was it, 2 years ago now? But the year before that, when everybody thought Raekwon Davis was better than him because he was actually playing better, and then he kind of just tailed off at Alabama a little bit. But in the Dolphins scheme, he could end up being pretty good. Probably play him. I don't think he'll play nose tackle, but he'll play, since they play a 3-4, I think he'll play one of the other like defensive line positions. But he's kind of a guy, maybe 2 years down the road, he could be good.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything else cool to say?
I don't think so. Go Raiders.
Go Raiders. Go Packers.
Go Packers. Yep.
All right. Sweet. This was a deeper look into Dynasty. This was our Dynasty Startup League with contracts. This was Craig from the Raiders team that we were talking to. So if you guys like this segment, be trying to do more with a couple of different owners in the league. If you liked Mr. G, we'll bring him back sometime to talk as well. All right, guys. That'd be a wrap for this one. If you enjoyed this segment, like the video. If you haven't already, subscribe. And if you got any other ideas for future videos, leave a comment down below.